need the ones that didn't get here. The ones that didn't get here.
They found their way into the studio.
Last week's people.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just, you know, you hear this canard that politicians roll this one out a couple times a week. The American people are far more intelligent than they're given credit for.
The world froze when the headline appeared. 1 minute ago, George Carlin is breaking the news. For a moment, people thought it was clickbait, another cruel AI stunt exploiting nostalgia. But then they heard the voice, the unmistakable growl, the rhythm, the sarcasm. It sounded exactly like George Carlin, alive again, cutting through the noise of 2025 with the same brutal honesty that made him a legend. The clip came from a tiny YouTube channel no one had heard of. The title read, "George Carlin predicted this week's news." In the video, his voice railed against corruption, propaganda, and a media built to confuse, not inform. The strange part? Everything he said matched real events happening that very day. A political scandal, a corporate cover-up, and a viral misinformation campaign. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Some claimed it was AI. Others insisted it was an unreleased performance, lost for years. But the more people listened, the more unsettling it became. It wasn't just the sound of George Carlin. It was his spirit, his words slicing through decades of lies. And if it truly was him, then the world had better be ready for what came next. The clip appeared out of nowhere. A grainy video titled "George Carlin Predicted This in 2025" uploaded to a barely active YouTube channel. The thumbnail was simple: a vintage microphone, a dark background, and Carlin's face faintly visible through static. No one knew who posted it, but the moment people pressed play, the internet went silent. The voice that came through was unmistakable. George Carlin's raspy tone, his deliberate pauses, his cynical amusement that always teetered between humor and fury. He spoke about the news, the government, the illusion of choice, and how people don't read anymore, they scroll. He talked about how society had traded truth for entertainment, saying, "They don't even sell lies anymore. They rent them to you in monthly subscriptions." It was classic Carlin, biting, funny, painfully accurate. But what shocked everyone was how modern the references were. He mentioned social media influencers, algorithmic manipulation, and even hinted at global events that had only happened this year. How could he know? The upload date said it was posted just an hour ago, but Carlin had been dead for nearly 2 decades. The comments section flooded instantly. Some said it was AI-generated, a deepfake created by someone using Carlin's voice to deliver a modern message. Others argued it was an unreleased bit, something recorded during his final tours but never aired. The timing, however, was too perfect. The day the video dropped, a real-life media scandal broke involving a major news corporation accused of manipulating political polls. People began drawing eerie parallels between Carlin's speech and the headlines scrolling across live TV that morning. Within hours, the clip was everywhere. TikTok edits, Instagram reels, even major networks were running segments titled "George Carlin Speaks Again." The video crossed 5 million views before YouTube mysteriously removed it for copyright review, only fueling the frenzy. Every copy was re-uploaded, mirrored, and shared faster than the platform could take them down. Journalists tried contacting the account that posted it, but the profile had vanished, replaced by a single line of text. "He warned you. We just hit play." For the next 48 hours, the internet descended into chaos. Analysts were divided. Some insisted it was AI-generated art, while others claimed it contained fragments from real Carlin recordings spliced together. No one could fully explain how the timing lined up so perfectly. But one truth became clear. George Carlin, dead or not, had just broken the news in a way no living journalist could. As the clip spread like wildfire, experts from every field stepped in to dissect it. Audio engineers, linguists, and AI specialists all wanted to know the same thing. Was this really George Carlin, or a digital ghost created by code? Within hours, several labs released preliminary analyses claiming the voice matched Carlin's vocal patterns with uncanny accuracy. Every breath, every sarcastic pause, every punch of emphasis on certain syllables sounded identical to the comedian's signature delivery. The phrasing was flawless. The comedic rhythm, the setup, tension, and release was pure Carlin. Yet something felt off. Deep in the waveform, there were strange digital irregularities, tiny fluctuations in pitch and modulation that suggested synthetic blending. Some experts said it was an AI voice trained on Carlin's recordings. Others believed it was a restored piece of an unreleased show, perhaps remastered and edited. But then came the twist. A small group of Carlin historians noted that parts of the monologue contained exact sentences from his early 2000s notes, lines that had never been performed publicly but were cataloged in archives after his death. These weren't just random quotes. They were obscure scribbles Carlin had jotted down for a project he'd called Future Nonsense. Somehow, those same lines had made it into this viral new speech. How could that happen if this was all AI fabrication? The internet divided into factions overnight. One side claimed it was the most advanced example yet of AI mimicry, a chilling reminder that technology could now clone even the dead with terrifying precision. The other side insisted there was something deeper, something spiritual, or even conspiratorial. How else could Carlin's lost words reappear after decades in obscurity? Some Reddit users suggested a hacker might have broken into Carlin's estate archives or obtained access to the National Comedy Center's digital database. Others speculated that Carlin himself had left behind a time capsule of unreleased material, programmed to drop at a specific future date. As debates raged, one undeniable truth remained. Whoever, or whatever, created the clip understood Carlin's essence better than any living impersonator ever could. His voice, whether organic or engineered, cut through the noise with brutal clarity. "They'll tell you what to believe," the voice said. "They'll call it truth because it came from a screen." Those words echoed across millions of minds. AI or authentic, it didn't matter. George Carlin had once again exposed society's deepest absurdity, this time from beyond the grave, and people couldn't decide if that was comforting or terrifying. As the internet erupted with speculation, a few determined researchers decided to dig deeper into George Carlin's archives. Hidden away in the National Comedy Center in Jamestown, New York, was a vast collection of his personal notebooks, audio reels, and recordings, materials that had been sealed since his death in 2008. These weren't just jokes and sketches. They were philosophical musings, outlines for unperformed shows, and entire rants he had never shared publicly. Among these files were folders labeled with strange titles: Digital Lies, Future Audience, and Posthumous Set. Most of it was handwritten on yellow legal pads filled with his iconic blocky handwriting, ranting about the future of media, government surveillance, and what he called the religion of information. The words were hauntingly familiar to anyone who had heard the viral clip. One passage read, "When the machines start talking back, they won't use words. They'll use patterns that make us think we're in control." Another note, dated 2006, warned, "Someday, comedy will be automated, and the audience won't even notice the difference." Suddenly, experts began to wonder, had someone accessed these archives and used Carlin's own words to create this new performance? The possibility sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. The National Comedy Center denied any breach, but quietly confirmed that several reels from the Carlin collection had been digitized earlier that year for restoration. One of the technicians later admitted, anonymously, that some of the audio files contained unlabeled fragments, snippets of Carlin's rehearsals, late-night studio rants, and private voice notes he'd recorded while experimenting with new material. These lost tapes were never meant for release, yet their tone matched the mysterious viral video almost perfectly. Fans started to call it the Rebel Tape. Meanwhile, conspiracy forums exploded with theories. Some claimed Carlin's estate had intentionally leaked the audio as a form of modern protest, using technology to amplify his words in an age that needed them most. Others believed it was a coordinated AI experiment designed to test how people respond to deep-faked morality. But one theory gained the most traction, that Carlin, the eternal provocateur, had planned this all along. Buried in one of his old interviews was a chilling quote: "If I ever come back, it won't be as a ghost. It'll be as a glitch in your system." Those words resurfaced now like prophecy. The archives had spoken, and the rebel's voice, whether real, fabricated, or foretold, was louder than ever. As people dove into Carlin's past performances, a chilling realization spread across the internet. George Carlin hadn't just been a comedian, he had been a prophet. Every clip, every old routine suddenly sounded less like a joke and more like a warning. Decades before social media, he had warned about the illusion of choice and the owners of this country who controlled everything from the news to the politicians. He mocked the blind consumerism that people now lived by. He said, "They got you by the words. They decide what's real and what's offensive." And now, in 2025, as deepfakes blurred the line between truth and fiction, it was as if he had seen it all coming. News anchors replayed his old footage side by side with current headlines, and the comparisons were eerie. His rants about surveillance sounded like direct responses to today's AI privacy debates. His jokes about political puppets mirrored current scandals almost word for word. Even his laughter, the kind that made people uncomfortable, felt like it had been aimed right at this moment in history. The man who once said, "The real owners of this country don't want an informed public," had been proven right in ways no one could deny. And that's what made the viral new video so powerful. Whether it was real or fake didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that George Carlin's voice had returned to remind the world of everything it had ignored. Talk shows, podcasts, and universities began revisiting his legacy. Philosophers analyzed his monologues as if they were scripture. Some called him a social prophet. Others said he was America's last honest man. But for millions online, this wasn't nostalgia. It was revelation. One viral comment said it best: "Carlin didn't predict the future. The future just caught up to his jokes." People began treating his words like sacred truth, quoting him in protests, documentaries, and think pieces. Comedians admitted that no one had come close to matching his fearless honesty. He had mocked cancel culture before it existed, exposed hypocrisy before it became fashionable, and warned that entertainment would replace education. Now, that line echoed across social media as users posted memes of his face with the caption, "He tried to tell us." Ironically, Carlin's timeless rebellion had become prophecy fulfilled. The man who once joked that humanity is circling the drain seemed to be speaking again, this time from the other side of history, reminding everyone that laughter was never just comedy. It was truth in disguise. As the mystery deepened, investigators and Journalists began hunting for what was now being called the Lost Carlin tape. If this viral video really came from unreleased material, there had to be an original recording somewhere. A trail of leads pointed to a small audio restoration studio in Los Angeles, the same company that had worked on preserving George Carlin's archives for a posthumous documentary back in 2006. When reporters reached out, the studio refused to comment, but a former technician came forward anonymously, revealing he had handled several mystery reels labeled only with Carlin's initials. He claimed one of them was unlike anything he'd ever heard. It wasn't a comedy routine, he said. It sounded like Carlin talking to himself late at night, ranting into a microphone about the future. There were no laughs, no crowd, just him and his thoughts. The technician described one particular reel with strange distortion, as though it had been recorded over multiple times. In the background, Carlin's voice faded in and out, saying things like, "When they can fake me, they'll own you," and "You'll see me again when the jokes aren't funny anymore." The man believed those tapes had been quietly removed from the archives after Carlin's death. But who took them? Soon after his revelation, the technician disappeared from public view, his social media accounts wiped clean, his email deactivated. A week later, an online whistleblower forum posted a blurry photo supposedly showing a Carlin-labeled reel on a black market auction site. The starting bid, $500,000. Whether it was real or not didn't matter. The hunt was on. Reddit threads tracked suspicious archive sales, claiming that private collectors had been trading lost recordings from the estates of other comedians, musicians, and actors for years. The idea that Carlin's final words could be buried among them was enough to drive thousands into amateur detective mode. Meanwhile, tech experts continued combing through the viral video's metadata. Some claimed the file's digital signature linked back to a private IP address located in Burbank, California, a city known for its studios and post-production houses. Others argued the signature was intentionally faked to send investigators in circles. The deeper they dug, the murkier it became. Even YouTube's statement fueled speculation. They called the clip a violation of synthetic media policy, but later retracted that claim, citing classification error. It was as if someone wanted the world to stay confused. Every discovery led to more questions, and every new rumor made Carlin's return feel more like a controlled event than an accident. Fans began calling it Operation Microphone, believing the video's timing, message, and global reaction were all part of something bigger. Whether by fate, design, or digital resurrection, George Carlin's voice had returned, and whoever unearthed it wasn't done yet. When the mysterious recording was finally transcribed and analyzed line by line, what emerged sent chills across the world. The voice, whether AI-generated or genuine, didn't sound like a comedian performing a routine anymore. It sounded like a man leaving behind a warning. "The next big lie won't come from politicians," the voice said. "It'll come from code. It'll come dressed as truth, in pixels and plugins, and you'll thank it for lying to you." The words were sharp, deliberate, filled with the same brutal honesty Carlin wielded on stage, but heavier, darker, almost prophetic. He mocked the obsession with digital applause, saying, "They've turned validation into a currency, and everyone's broke." He spoke of a future where people would pay for the illusion of freedom one subscription at a time. Every line hit harder than the last. It was like Carlin had seen the exact world we live in now. Screens filled with outrage, truth twisted by algorithms, and attention sold like stock. But it was the closing words that truly stopped listeners cold. They'll try to erase what's real by making you doubt your own memory. When that happens, remember this voice, because when I'm the fake, that sounds real, you'll know it's over. Those final seconds sent shockwaves through every corner of the internet. News anchors debated its meaning. Some saw it as a critique of modern media. Others said it was Carlin's ghost giving humanity one last sermon. A few tech insiders whispered about secret AI projects trained on human personalities, models that could mimic the dead with frightening precision. But beyond the speculation, there was something deeply human in the message, something too self-aware for an algorithm. The voice wasn't just criticizing society, it was addressing the listener directly, calling out our dependence on the systems we built to distract us. Every generation had a truth teller, and Carlin had been one of the last who could make people laugh while making them uncomfortable. Now his message had returned, stripped of humor and amplified by technology, as though the joke had finally ended and the punchline was reality itself. Late-night hosts replayed the tape and fell silent. Even comedians who once imitated Carlin admitted the new performance was too raw, too precise to dismiss as parody. Whether real or synthetic, it felt intentional, as if the rebel had saved his most serious act for the world that needed it most. People didn't know if they should laugh, cry, or unplug. But one thing was clear. If this really was George Carlin's final warning, it wasn't about death, comedy, or fame. It was about the moment when humanity would no longer be able to tell the difference between a voice and a machine. And maybe, just maybe, that moment had already arrived. The world didn't just listen to the mysterious Carlin recording, it reacted to it. Within days, the clip had reshaped public conversation. Memes, documentaries, talk shows, and college lectures all revolved around one question. Who was truly speaking? Carlin or the machine? Yet regardless of its origin, the message hit too close to home. People began quoting it in protests, tagging his name on cardboard signs beside slogans like "Truth isn't trending" and "Carlin warned us." A cultural earthquake was underway. Comedians paid tribute online, calling it a wake-up call for truth in entertainment. Bill Burr said, "It's freaky, man, but it sounds like George saw this circus coming." Dave Chappelle told his audience, "If Carlin's ghost has Wi-Fi, maybe he's just logging in to say we screwed up." Social commentators called it the most important digital mystery of the decade. News outlets replayed the speech on loop, some editing it into montages of Carlin's old routines, juxtaposed with footage of riots, tech scandals, and political chaos. For millions, it was more than nostalgia. It was a mirror held up to society, and nobody liked what they saw. Governments tried to calm the hysteria, releasing statements about digital authenticity verification, but that only fueled the paranoia. Protesters gathered outside tech company headquarters with signs that read, "Who programs the truth?" while others accused corporations of covering up the source of the recording. Even comedians' unions began debating the ethics of digital resurrection. Should voices of the dead be recreated without consent? Was it tribute or exploitation? One late-night panel featured artists, philosophers, and AI experts arguing whether Carlin's viral voice was a warning or a weapon. Ironically, the chaos unfolding around his words was exactly what he'd always joked about: the stupidity of collective outrage. But the difference now was that the outrage was real, global, and uncontrollable. Universities announced new courses on AI ethics and digital consciousness, using the Carlin clip as their primary case study. Meanwhile, in New York, fans built makeshift memorials outside comedy clubs, leaving candles and handwritten notes reading, "He's still watching." The National Comedy Center, now overwhelmed with requests for information, quietly increased security around Carlin's archives. People began wondering if this was just the start. if other long-dead figures might speak again next. Had technology finally crossed the line between preservation and resurrection? The viral Carlin clip became more than a digital mystery. It became a global reflection of humanity's hunger for truth in an age built on lies. And perhaps that was the cruelest twist of all. A man who spent his life mocking the system had once again shaken it to its core. The cultural earthquake he triggered proved one thing beyond all doubt. George Carlin might be gone, but his rebellion was very much alive. As the storm of speculation began to settle, one haunting question lingered in every discussion, every podcast, every post that bore his name. If George Carlin were alive today, what would he say? The viral voice had already said enough to shake the digital world, but it was the silence afterward that made people truly think. Across social media, fans began stitching together clips of Carlin's real performances with the mysterious new recording, and something strange emerged. It all fit together, as if the man had never left. His critiques of greed, political theater, and blind obedience seemed more relevant than ever, like time had simply waited for humanity to catch up with his cynicism. His old quote, "It's called the American dream because you have to be asleep to believe it," went viral again, shared alongside footage of modern protests, data leaks, and billionaires giving speeches about ethics. It was as though Carlin had risen from the dead to hold a mirror to our screens and say, "Still laughing?" Even comedians who built their careers trying to emulate him admitted they were scared by how accurate his worldview had become. One stand-up performer said, "He was joking about this stuff. We're living it." People began gathering in comedy clubs and public parks for impromptu Carlin nights, where they played his classic routines on big screens as if attending a sermon. What had begun as a mysterious video had transformed into something spiritual, a cultural resurrection of Carlin's philosophy. And yet, beneath all the excitement and reverence, a darker truth crept in. The internet, the very system Carlin had warned about, the information machine that eats your soul, had turned his words into currency once again. Every repost, every remix, every debate about authenticity was another example of how his warning was being ignored, even as it was repeated. The irony was perfect. Carlin had spent his life mocking society for missing the point, and even in death, humanity still couldn't help itself. People argued endlessly over whether the viral clip was AI or real, but none of them stopped to think about what the message actually meant. Maybe that was his final joke. Maybe the message was never meant to prove anything. It was meant to expose how quickly we'll believe what entertains us, how easily we mistake rebellion for trend. And if Carlin could somehow look out at the world now, at our outrage, our politics, our scrolling, our obsession with being right, he'd probably shake his head and laugh. He'd remind us that nothing changes because no one wants it to, that people would rather debate reality than face it, that the world didn't need more jokes, it needed to wake up. "You can't fix stupid," he once said, "but you can amuse yourself while it self-destructs." And maybe, just maybe, that's what this whole thing was. The final Carlin act, the last laugh from a man who saw humanity's script a little too clearly. Whether the video was fake, divine, or programmed didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that the truth behind it had already done its work. The message had gone viral, the discussion had begun, and the audience, his eternal audience, was listening again. The world he warned about was here. The systems of control, the illusions of freedom, the lies disguised as news, all of it had arrived exactly as he said it would. The only thing left was the question Carlin himself would probably ask if he could break the silence one last time. So now that you finally see it, what are you gonna do about it? And that's why, decades after his death, George Carlin is still breaking the news. Because the punchline was never about laughter. It was about truth. And the truth, as always, hurts just enough to make you pay attention.